Guys, I did it. 3 videos in 3 days, capping it off with my mid-season mock draft. You guys know mock drafts are definitely my favorite kind of video, and I'd love to start doing them a little bit more often for you guys, maybe once or twice a month, and also starting the individual team mock drafts a little bit sooner so that I can get to more teams before April rolls around. The goal in this video is going to be 1,000 likes. I know that's a lot, but you guys have been awesome throughout the past on these mock drafts, so please help a brother out, hit that like button, and let's jump right into it. The tank job is officially underway in Miami in historic fashion like we've never seen before. I mean, at least the Cleveland Browns were subtle about it. One thing is for sure though, this semi-pro roster is filled with 53 guys fighting for a job. Honestly, the Dolphins aren't that far away and only need an offensive line overhaul with a good coach that can get a group of guys that can mesh. But now that secondary needs more guys after Minkah Fitzpatrick bailed on them after a couple weeks into the season. If this was a true tank job, it'd be done with more than one season of less than 5 wins, and I'm going to be doing a Dolphins only mock draft because this is as close to a Madden overhaul with cap space and draft picks as you're gonna get in real life. Real quick though, for me personally, I would be trading down from number 1 here, finding a way to draft one of these top offensive tackles and Grant Delpit early on, and looking towards getting a supporting cast for Trevor Lawrence in 2021. But if ownership really likes Tua and he's there and you've got that number 1 overall pick, then go get your guy. But I still can't help but feel like Josh Rosen has been giving the rawest of deals here. The Bengals have been fighting hard in all their losses, and they better be careful or else they're going to play themselves right out of position to get a new quarterback. Cue quarterback change. Andy Dalton has now been benched for a 4th round rookie who was not very good at NC State, mind you. But Andy Dalton has got 1 year left on his deal and is set up to be a perfect bridge quarterback to a top rookie, and Burrow has had quite the ascension to the top of the draft this year. I remember watching his game against Texas and thinking that this dude was different from the start. And he's also got the confidence that you look for in a franchise quarterback, which will be a nice change up from Andy Dalton. Now you're going to see a lot of mock drafts this year that have Joe Burrow at number 1. Do not be fooled. Unless it's the Bengals up there and they just really don't like Tua, or hey, maybe another team sneaks up there to the top of the draft. Don't believe all of the Tua hate, like the Tua has all of a sudden gotten worse from what we've seen before. 1, he's been dealing with some injuries this year, and 2, he's being asked to do a lot less than he was last year. I hear people saying that he's not making as impressive throws or whatever. I hate this when guys come back because they have to, only to get over scrutinized to the point where we think that there's something wrong with them. But then you've got a guy like Joe Burrow that comes out of nowhere and then he hits the NFL and he's Mitch Trubisky. This is exactly what happened with Deshaun Watson. I hope that we can learn from our mistakes though. I'm not saying that Tua is as good as Deshaun Watson, but I know and I feel more comfortable and confident in picking a guy like Tua over Joe Burrow right now today. But things can always change. The Giants have always been known for their pass rushers, but all of a sudden the well dried up and Marcus Golden is all of a sudden the main guy creating pressure for their defense. Their whole defense changes with the addition of Chase Young. I'm not a fan of forcing these natural edge rushers into space with a 3-4 defense, but teams spend so much time in nickel and dime packages these days that Chase Young could still be rushing the quarterback most of the time. If the Giants don't end up picking this high, Notre Dame edge rusher Julian Okwara is actually a better fit for their scheme, almost as good of a fit as Kentucky's Josh Allen would have been. Before we go any farther, I want to thank Manscaped for sponsoring this mid-season mock draft. That's a lot of M's. I kind of like it though. The Manscaped mid-season mock draft. Manscaped.com is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. I once tried to use this random shaver that my grandmother had gotten me for Christmas while in the shower, and let me tell you, things got ugly. But Manscaped created the first world's manscaping kit that makes manscaping safe and easy. Precision engineered tools for your family jewels. The Perfect Package 2.0 kit features the Lawnmower 2.0 waterproof manscaping trimmer with a powerful 6,000 RPM motor and skin-safe technology. No nicks or snags guaranteed. That's the old nick your sack, send it back guarantee. Just use my code NFL20, that's NFL20 at purchase and you get free shipping and 20% off your order. So make sure you use that promo code NFL20, NFL20 at manscapes.com. For a limited time, subscribers get a free gift, the Shed Travel Bag, which is a $39 value added for free. Go check them out. I appreciate them sponsoring this video, and I promise your balls will thank you. Let's get back to the mock draft. The Falcons defense just doesn't work right now, and regardless of who they hire at head coach for 2020, I think that they're going to have to find somebody that can maintain their 4-3 defensive scheme because they've just spent too many resources on pieces that really just fit this scheme. The linebackers are not pass rushers, and they're not big enough to play inside and take on interior offensive linemen. The Falcons should turn into tank mode so they can try and secure Chase Young for themselves, but Iowa edge rusher AJ Epinesa is a nice consolation prize and would be an ideal fit opposite of Takk McKinley in a 4-3 scheme, oddly similar to Dan Quinn's scheme in the mold of a younger Adrian Claiborne. The Redskins' relationship with Trent Williams is over, and I think that the Redskins are just waiting for him to either A, come back, or B, for another year of his contract to fall off because the cap penalty is much better after this season. You're looking at $3.6 million in dead cap this year along with $2 million next year while only saving $80,000 of cap space, while next year provides $12.75 million in cap with only $1.9 million in dead cap. Andrew Thomas is the best offensive lineman in the 2020 NFL draft right now and would give Dwayne Haskins a franchise left tackle to grow with. The Broncos can't rely on Garrett Bowles as their left tackle, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them hold on to him for another year. Tristan Wirfs is a plug-and-play offensive tackle from an underrated NFL offensive line factory in Iowa, and maybe moving Bowles to another spot on the offensive line will take some pressure off him and he can play a little bit looser and not so grabby. Titans moving on from Marcus Mariota is inevitable, but I don't see them using a first-round pick on another quarterback after Vince Young, Jake Locker, and Marcus Mariota have all failed. This defense is primed, and there's going to be enough veteran quarterbacks available this offseason that they're more likely to give Phillip Rivers a shot, maybe bring Ryan Tannehill back because he's looked alright, or dare I say Tom Brady. All three would be better options though than a rookie quarterback in 2020. And can I just say Jeffrey Simmons was an awesome pick last year, and the interior of this defensive line is going to be so disruptive in 2020. And with this draft class loaded at cornerback, they can wait on adding some talent to the pool there. The offensive line has lacked consistency, but their offensive tackles are set, assuming that they bring back Conklin at right tackle, and you don't want to draft interior offensive line this high. So the Titans go safe and get a pass rusher to eventually replace Cameron Wake in Julian Okwara, who is a natural 3-4 edge rusher that can rush the passer and play in space. The first half of the season for the Chargers went about as badly as it possibly could, and Phillip Rivers is actually a free agent after this season. If Rivers wants to keep on playing, I could see him making a move to the East Coast to be closer to home and joining a team like the Titans, like I mentioned, who will be looking to replace Marcus Mariota, but not ready to rebuild with a rookie quarterback like I said. Justin Herbert then would get to stay on the West Coast and help translate some of those Oregon fans into Chargers fans, so maybe the Chargers can start, having a home field advantage. The Buccaneers got a steal in Shaq Barrett, and they're still going to need a little bit of help on the edge, but I'm still just so surprised they passed on Derwin James for Vita Vea, and I need them to right that wrong with this pick of Grant Delpit. I love Delpit, a lot, and I still think that Derwin James has a higher ceiling. Both guys have been dealing with injuries this year, but there's a reason that LSU gave Delpit that number 7 jersey. He is a long, rangy cover safety that would help their secondary in a division that puts a lot of pressure on DBs. It's looking like this Khalil Mack trade has the potential to pay off for both teams, especially if this 2020 pick ends up being in the top 10 like this. It's unlikely the Raiders start over with a rookie quarterback in my opinion, but Derek Carr just doesn't seem like he's going to be brought back on that contract. I expect John Gruden to seek a veteran quarterback that he's in love with because there's no shortage of them if you remember his Monday Night Football broadcasts. He literally was in love with every quarterback on the field. Now, depending on how the rest of the season plays out, Cam Newton could potentially be on the move. Maybe Matthew Stafford, Marcus Mariota. There's a lot of veteran quarterbacks that I've named for a few teams here. And with there being no quarterbacks or interior offensive line worthy of this pick here for the Raiders, they stopped the slide of Jerry Jeudy and replaced Amari Cooper and Antonio Brown with the next great NFL wide receiver out of Alabama. I would draft Jeudy way higher than this, but the NFL doesn't seem to value wide receivers this high in the draft anymore because the league feels pretty deep at the position. But the Raiders are still going to be trying to find a wide receiver 1, and Terrell Williams is definitely better suited as a wide receiver 2, and also that's just what he was brought in as. So the Raiders are going to have to find that number 1 receiver at some point. If they get the best one in the draft to fall to them, they've got to pull the trigger. In one of my unpublished preseason mock drafts, I had the Lions and Matthew Stafford parting ways because I didn't see the Lions being this competitive week in and week out. I figured they'd surprise us once in a while, but the consistency is something you've got to credit Matt Patricia for. So Jake Fromm is no longer the pick here, and the Lions grab Jeffrey Okudah because Darius Slay has been doing it himself out there for far too long, and I thought that he might not be in the long-term plans for the Lions, but after they were trying to get Chris Harris from the Broncos at the trade deadline, it looked like they were trying to find a solution for a cross from Darius Slay anyways, and if the top cornerback falls to them in the draft, just like Jeudy to the Raiders, it makes too much sense not to happen. The Arizona Cardinals could go many different ways with this pick. The secondary is a mess, and they may move on from Patrick Peterson during the offseason if someone offers more than a third-round pick for him. The pass rush was surprisingly effective but old, and the running backs couldn't stay healthy, but they're easily replaceable in this offense, and Kenyon Drake's potential here is actually really exciting now. They've got to address this offensive line. I know they felt like they could turn it around with some scheme changes, but they still need to add better players to this group. Tyler, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but I'm sure I'm going to figure it out and nail it by the end of the NFL season. He probably could have been at least a second-round pick last year, but the draft committee told him otherwise. But now he's got a chance to be a first-round pick, and I think he could become Kyler's best friend on the offense. I mean, the guy is a leader of the NFL offensive line factory, in my opinion, and helps make calls and protection adjustments at the line of scrimmage. Right now, the Cardinals starting center A.Q. Shipley is getting old, and he's going to be a free agent after the season, but bringing him back for a year could allow Tyler to play guard for a little while learning the ins and outs of the offense. It might be a little bit early for him or interior offensive line in general, but I think the results would be worth securing your center for a decade. But maybe the Cardinals can trade down, pick him up a little bit later, and continue to build that team with some fresh young prospects. Robbie Anderson wasn't moved at the trade deadline, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's playing somewhere else in 2020. But Sam Darnold is still going to need a burner if the offense is going to stretch the field here. Henry Ruggs III has got game-breaking speed and might offer a little bit more consistency than Robbie Anderson. The Raiders are back on the clock with their second first-round pick, and they moved on from former first-round pick Gary Conley because he was struggling in their heavy zone coverage scheme, and that's because he was drafted mostly as a man corner. Most of the top cornerbacks in this draft are man cover guys, so I see the Raiders continuing to wait on that and getting one of my favorite X factors in this draft, hybrid safety linebacker Isaiah Simmons. The Raiders have had a need at linebacker for a while, and Simmons offers the flexibility to cover tight ends or maybe even wide receivers in a pinch. This just feels like a John Gruden, Mike Mayock pick and might be able to help them at two different positions of need. The Dolphins have tons of cap space, and I expect them to use a lot of it to sway some of these offensive linemen from other teams like Titans right tackle Jack Conklin or Saints guard Andrews Pete. Unless you want a multi-year tank job, I don't know if you want an offensive line full of rookies. The Dolphins owner probably also dreams of linking Tua up with one of his college wide receivers, but in this scenario, they're going to have to settle for CeeDee Lamb, if you can call that settling. I don't think that NFL teams will be as high on CeeDee Lamb as football fans are because he kind of lacks that extra gear that the Bama wide receivers and a lot of other guys in this class already possess, but he is everything that you kind of hope Preston Williams can develop into already. So they grab a weapon for Tua first, and then they focus on the offensive line later. Jalen Ramsey is now with the Rams, and AJ Bouyer's contract is almost up, and the man's going to be 30 years old this year. The Jaguars like to fill the cupboard before it's empty, and Bryce Hall is a value pick for the future as he recovers from an injury. He's basically the anti-Jalen Ramsey and definitely a Tom Coughlin kind of guy, so this pairing just makes so much sense. The Bills tried to get by with free agent wide receivers, but it's clear that Josh Allen is going to need a number one guy, and someone with a larger catch radius would be nice. Laviska Shenault Jr. is a big rack wide receiver that could allow the offense to maintain its current structure, but would have more big play potential. Fletcher Cox has still been asked to do far too much for this Eagles defense, and there's just way too much defensive tackle depth still on the board to get past the Eagles. Derek Brown shocked me by coming back after he was likely a first-round pick in the 2019 NFL draft, and he could fall victim to the over-analysis that drops players in the draft, but falling into the Eagles' lap would be an ideal scenario for him and his future success in the NFL. The Vikings are also notorious for drafting guys a year in advance, and even though things are looking up right now, Kirk Cousins should not be brought after this contract expires. Utah State quarterback Jordan Love is a next-generation quarterback with a lot of potential, and I won't be surprised if he's in consideration for the top quarterback in this draft come March and April. He's still super raw though, so sitting in a year behind Kirk Cousins is an ideal scenario for him. Whether or not Cam Newton is back in 2020 as the Panthers starting quarterback, they're going to need to improve that offensive line. Cam has had a revolving door at left tackle since Jordan Gross retired. Auburn offensive tackle Prince Tega Wananoho is a raw athlete at the position and the next guy on my early draft board. And before you scoff at the idea that Cam Newton might not be the Panthers quarterback in the future, they could get $19 million in cap relief and only take $2 million in dead money by releasing him. So that's just something to pay attention to moving forward. The Browns wanted to get Trent Williams for the Redskins at the trade deadline, and they still might this offseason. Everyone was criticizing the GM for holding on to Trent Williams, but unless the Browns were willing to absorb his cap hit, it makes sense why the Redskins held on to him for the rest of the year, like I explained earlier. And guess what? Teams that view themselves as a contender are still going to be throwing second and third round picks at the Redskins next year for their franchise left tackle. Anyways, this is the Browns pick, not the Redskins, and adding an offensive tackle like the guy out of TCU, Lucas Niang, help me out there. That would be a wise move for this team regardless of Trent Williams. He's got the size to play inside and out. He's got the feet and athleticism to do both as well. I actually struggled to find another hole in this Jaguars roster to fill with this second pick in the first round for them. Linebacker would be a need that they could fill. Miles Jack can't be the only one out there doing this, but I didn't want to reach on a guy, and the Jaguars salary cap situation might not allow them to take another Miles Jack type of risk with Alabama linebacker Dylan Moses. But the back end of the secondary could use another piece to build on. Every year there's a safety that rises to the first round, and I'm taking an early flyer on Cal free safety Ashton Davis. Bryce Hall and Ashton Davis would help the Jaguars move on from losing Jalen Ramsey and be better prepared for AJ Bouye's approaching departure. The Colts are a different team to project where they could go with this pick. I don't think that they'd go quarterback, and I kind of laugh when I see mocks taking them one in the first round. I could see wide receiver or tight end being a luxury pick for them, because you don't know if Eric Ebron or Devin Funchess will be back in 2020. But the Colts, they don't take luxury picks, at least not since Frank Reich was hired. This is more likely a man in the trenches, and a real defensive tackle would help that defense, because right now they're basically lining up 4 defensive ends across the line. Not one of the 4 guys eclipses 300 pounds, so Raekwon Davis is going to fit their mold while also providing a little bit more appropriate size for the position. The offensive line used to be the 49ers' glaring need, with safety a close second, but it's amazing how a competent quarterback and a well-designed running game has solved that issue, and the safety play seems a lot better with a rotation of like 4 or 5 first-round defensive linemen rushing the passer. In fact, this whole roster seems stacked now. Maybe a wide receiver, but they've already got some young prospects that they've already used very high draft capital on, and you gotta let them develop, at least give them a chance. Maybe linebacker, but I think that Fred Warner and Quan Alexander are more than enough, and this draft is loaded at cornerback, so you should be able to wait on that pick at least. Well, the offensive line was a glaring need, and usually when those glaring needs are masked, you're not far from it becoming an issue once again. Alabama's Alex Leatherwood is a versatile offensive lineman that could play inside or out, with ideal traits for a Shanahan zone blocking scheme. He could take over at guard for Mike Person or Laken Tomlinson from day one, while you use them to provide some veteran depth. They're serviceable players, but ultimately replaceable. Then Leatherwood, which is a perfect name for an offensive lineman, by the way, he can be your left tackle in waiting, just in case this Joe Staley injury is a sign of the times for him. I mean, he is going to be 36 next year after all. After the Cowboys had legit offered a first and third for Jamal Adams at the trade deadline, I think it's clear that they know they need this defense to have better players at the safety position to be successful. Well, shame on them for passing my boy Juan Thornhill last year for a defensive tackle they could have gotten in the 3rd or maybe even the 4th round that has been a healthy scratch for most of his rookie year. And then they got stingy with Earl Thomas when he publicly wanted to come to Dallas. Well, here you go, Alabama safety Xavier McKinney. These Alabama safeties are kind of hit or miss, and McKinney doesn't possess the same athleticism that some of his predecessors had, but he doesn't have any glaring weaknesses and can still be that single high free safety that his Cowboys defense has lacked for years. And I just realized that's 3 Alabama players in a row. Interesting. The Ravens' pass rush has not been as effective as they are used to in Baltimore, and Tim Williams was a sacrificial lamb in what I assume was an attempt to be a wake-up call for the rest of the edge rushers on the team. Well, surprise, surprise, they still are going to need more pass rush next year, and Penn State edge Yetur Gross-Matos is a super athletic and raw edge rusher that can also play in space and would be an ideal fit in the Ravens' 3-4 scheme. It feels like the number 2 wide receiver has been a revolving door for the Saints ever since Michael Thomas became the alpha male around there. Ted Ginn has provided a nice complement to Mike when he's healthy, but they need a Brandon Cooks for this offense, and TCU wide receiver Jalen Reagor is cut from the same cloth and possibly even more explosive than Brandon Cooks. This is obviously assuming one of 2 things happens. Drew Brees comes back for one more hoorah, or Teddy Bridgewater is back as the starting quarterback this time. This roster definitely should not start over with a rookie quarterback. As long as the Chiefs are one of the most high-powered offenses in the league, people are going to mock them a defensive player in the first round of the draft, and that's entirely possible, but I want to take a trip down memory lane here real quick. The Peyton Manning era Colts had a unique draft strategy that ensured that they kept the offense clicking, while the defense had plenty of new prospects every year to keep up with the number of plays the offense forced them on the field for. That strategy was to get an offensive weapon in the first round, and then spend basically the entire rest of the draft picks on defense. Imagine this offense with DeAndre Swift in the backfield. LaShawn McCoy is a shell of himself, and Damian Williams is definitely better as a change-up running back rather than an every-down running back. But DeAndre Swift brings that same skill set that LaShawn McCoy has, and a little bit of that cut-on-a-dime energy that he brings. Like I mentioned in the Dolphins' last pick, we still don't know the true cream of the offensive line crop. Yeah, we know the top 2 or 3 guys, but that's because they've been highly touted offensive tackles or whatever since high school. For the sake of keeping Dolphins fans sane, I'm giving them Oklahoma's center Creed Humphrey. Last year, he was able to play with 4 NFL offensive linemen, so naturally his play has declined a little bit this year, but if he enters the draft, he's only a redshirt sophomore, I think. If he enters the draft, he could be a late first rounder and would be a great piece for the Dolphins to start building a core around. Wide receiver will be an easy mock for the Packers this year, but I don't think that's where this team is going to go in the draft. A rookie wide receiver would have the chance to come in and play early on, but how many times does a rookie wide receiver either A, need time to develop, or B, hit a rookie wall? No, this team needs to go sign AJ Green or even some lower tier guy like Devin Funchess or Philip Dorsett in free agency. This is actually my favorite landing place for injured Alabama interior linebacker Dylan Moses to land. He tore his ACL in September, so he should be ready to go in 2020, and this team has been searching for an interior linebacker since they tried playing Clay Matthews out of position just to fill the role. And this is somewhat of a luxury pick because he might not be able to play to start the year, so at least the Packers have some starters in place to hold down the fort until Dylan Moses is ready to contribute. I actually think that the Patriots thought that Gronk would come back after he retired, but this dude caught a glimpse of the analyst and entertainer lifestyle and just ran with it. I don't blame him because his stories about the Patriot way sound miserable for 6 out of the 7 days of the week. If the Patriots need a new quarterback in 2020, they won't be staying in the late 30s or pick 32 if you think they're winning the Super Bowl. They won't be staying there to select him. But if they are down here in this bottom of the first round and they don't need to pick a quarterback for whatever reason, then one of the top tight ends should be their guy. I still like Alberto from Mizzou as the top tight end, but the guy from Purdue, Bryson Hopkins, he also fits their mold. I was shocked at the pushback from the Seahawks being the team that I had winning it all in my midseason predictions video. I didn't think that they had that many non-believers, but I guess seeing the Saints and Ravens go into Seattle and run it on them like that could be disconcerting moving forward, but maybe I just have too much faith in Pete Carroll getting this team primed for a run because it seems like they've used that first half of the season to sort of find out what they've got in their team, and then traditionally they flip all the right switches moving forward and then they make a run. Anyways, they could go defensive tackle here to fill up that run defense, but I got a little bit cute and had them staying local for, I don't know, 35, 40-year-old offensive tackle Trey Adams. I swear, this guy has been at Washington for at least a decade now, and now he gets to stay close to home and block for Russell Wilson. But seriously, this team needs to do something with the offensive line and stop getting cute themselves with these early draft picks. Will Dissly looks like he was working out, but some of these other picks are still head scratchers a year later. That's going to do it for my first 2020 NFL mock draft. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys didn't get too caught up in the draft order and we're focusing more on the things and the strategies that I was talking about as far as positions of need moving forward and players that you could potentially be targeting in the draft. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to go really hard on mock drafts this year. I think this is going to be an awesome NFL draft year because of the fact that we've got so many teams with multiple draft picks. I can't wait to get my hands on a 2-year Miami Dolphins mock draft. I'm going to take the, 5 first rounders that they have in the next 2 years and do a mock draft with all of those and just kind of see how different of a team we can build in 2 seasons just through the draft, not even with the free agency, just through the draft picks that they have. So those are the type of things I've got in store for this year. I hope you guys will follow me on this journey. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. Hit like if you enjoyed this and you want to see me do more of these. That like button helps more than you guys can know. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff, and I will see you all in the next video.